Today on the agenda, we'll be talking about the subject of sidewalks. Hi, this is City Manager Bill Osborne, and on this episode of On the Agenda, I'll talk with two members of my staff. First with City Planning Director Michele Wright, and we'll be talking about how we plan for sidewalks. And then I will talk with City Maintenance and Sanitation Director Greg Roberts concerning the construction and maintenance of sidewalks. Now, in and near downtown Douglasville, you'll find some sidewalks that have been here for many, many years. You'll also find some newer sidewalks because we have new sidewalk projects coming online almost every year or so. There are sidewalks in virtually every part of Douglasville now, and this is great because we look at sidewalks for connectivity, people being able, if they wish, to walk from one part of Douglasville to another. Now, I recognize, of course, tributary, that's not the case on reaching the rest of Douglasville, but for most of our city, there is a sidewalk not far from where you are that will let you walk to another part of our community. Now, recently on the same day, namely May 1st, we had groundbreaking ceremonies for two major sidewalk projects. On this particular Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning, we were down on Arbor Parkway near Highway 5, where we had groundbreaking for a new sidewalk project that will be built along Arbor Parkway and Stewart Parkway. And then an hour later, we're on the north side on Malone Road near Highway 5 for groundbreaking ceremonies for the new sidewalk on Malone Road. And when these two projects are completed, except for a stretch of about 1/4 of a mile between Malone Road and Brown Street along Georgia Highway 92, you could actually walk from the new sidewalk on Malone Road on the very north side of Douglasville to Arbor Parkway, Stewart Parkway on the south side of Douglasville and stay on the sidewalk the entire route. We hope that short section, about 1/4 of a mile, will be built in the near future so that you'll have total connectivity over the distances I was talking. We want people to use our sidewalks, whether it's for exercise or just to get from place to place, and so hope you will enjoy the sidewalks. Hope you enjoy today's program. And my first guest today is Michele Wright, City Planning Director. Michele, welcome to On the Agenda.
Thank you, Bill. I'm glad to be here.
Well, Michele, a few months ago you were my guest on this program, and we were talking about the Livable Centers Initiative, the LCI program, and the 10-year update of that program. Today we want to talk about sidewalks. And of course, pedestrian mobility has gotten to be a more important part of our overall transportation plan than it had been for a few decades ago after World War II. Certainly looking at sidewalks, bike paths, multi-use paths, certainly is much more interest in pedestrian mobility than there had been a few years ago. And we want to talk about that this morning, but before we start, let's talk about you for just a minute in terms of how you happened to come to Douglasville.
Well, I'm originally from California, and I went to California Polytechnic State University and majored in architecture, landscape architecture, and urban planning. And I first started work out there. I worked for the City of Torrance in Redondo Beach for about 7 years, and then I moved to Cobb County. And I worked for Cobb County for about 7 years, and then the City of Atlanta for a year, and then I came to City of Douglasville, and I've been here since March 13th, 1995.
Okay. And when you came to Douglasville, Michele had a very interesting job. She was the transportation planner for both the City of Douglasville and Douglas County governments. Now, I know people hear about how the city and county governments don't get along from time to time, and we have disagreements. But you know, we've had a lot of cooperative ventures down through the years, a lot of cooperation, and Michele's a living, breathing example of this because she was the transportation planner for both governments, a city employee assigned to and housed in the county planning department. In fact, when the county planning director at that time, Chris Ryan, resigned, Michele was actually named County Planning Director while being a city employee. And after the new County Planning Director was employed a few months later, the county decided they did not wish to continue the joint position of Transportation Planner. So the city up until that point had not had a full-time planning director. We created that position, brought Michele over to City Hall, and she's been there ever since. Now, we want to talk this morning, though, about one of the duties that you've had down through the years in transportation that relates both to city and county governments, and that's you have served with the Douglas County Douglasville Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which of course is a citizen body that's appointed by the two governments, the members are. So tell us about this group and your responsibilities with it.
Well, the group has been in effect here in Douglas County for approximately 17 or 18 years, and the whole purpose is to put a plan together, both the city and the county, for bicycles, pedestrians, signage, multi-use trails. And as you know, when you walk on a sidewalk, it doesn't stop at city or county lines, so it is a joint effort. The group has a plan put together for bicycle and pedestrian and multi-use trails. And they have a signage program and a bike rack program, and we also look at different projects, make recommendations on projects and grants for both the city of Douglasville and Douglas County.
Right, and I want to thank you for the work you've done with that group down through the years, and also want to take this occasion to thank the two City of Douglasville appointees to this joint city-county committee. George Boulinow, who's been the chairman of the group, I think, for about 8 years, and Francis Peltier, and we appreciate the work that the three of you have done. Now, we want to talk over the next few minutes about sidewalk projects that have been built in recent years or may be on the drawing board for the future. And as we do this, as you said, this advisory committee that you work with, they're involved with all sidewalk projects. In fact, if it hadn't been through that committee, it's not going to be accepted by the Atlanta Regional Commission. And if ARC doesn't accept it and put it on the Transportation Improvement Plan, it's really not going to be eligible for federal funds. So certainly the work that you've done and the committee has done down through the years have been very beneficial to the city. And there have been a number of grants that, of course, if you've worked to get for the city for sidewalk projects. And I know, as I've heard you talk down through the years, congestion mitigation, air quality, CMAC, the Livable Center initiatives, LCI, transportation enhancement, the T projects. We're not going to deal with the alphabet soup today with the different sidewalks, but just say that we have funding sources that have come to us several places with the state and federal government, as well locally, coming from city general funds or SPLOSH, our special purpose local option sales tax funds. But these two sidewalk projects that we had the kickoff for on May the 1st, I know you worked on those projects for a long time. Tell us about working on these projects for a long time and why it takes so long from the time that you first start working to get the grant until we actually can have the groundbreaking.
Well, through the federal and state process, they do have what they call a plan development process. In order to do a project, whether it's a sidewalk or an intersection or anything, you have to have it in the long-range plan. And from the long-range plan, which is the regional transportation plan, it goes into the short-range plan, which is the transportation improvement program. And because there's so many projects in the region and so much money that's available, it may take years to go through that process. Once it goes through that process and you're awarded a project, you go through several other processes. You have your preliminary engineering, which is where you plan the project. You have to do an environmental review, and you have to then go into right-of-way. If there's any right-of-way that needs to be acquired or construction easements, you have to do that, which means you have to deal with any individual property owner, whether it's commercial or residential, and that takes a time period. Then you have your utilities. If you have to relocate any utilities or work with the utility companies, a lot of times there's 3 or 4 out there, maybe Georgia Power or whoever, then you have to work with them, and then you finally do your bidding, and then you go to construction. And that's pretty much the process as to, you know, why it takes so long.
Right. Now we have on this Malone Road, Stewart Parkway, Arbor Parkway. When can we expect to see these projects completed?
Well, Malone Road is a much smaller project than Stewart and Arbor, because Stewart and Arbor is in a commercial area. It should be approximately about 4 months. Stewart and Arbor, we're looking at about 6 months for completion.
So Malone Road sometime early part of the fall, and the other sidewalk before the end of the year. And then you have 2 more sidewalk projects that were part of kind of the same overall scope that we're getting ready to move on. Tell us about those 2.
Well, we just received our notice to proceed to construction for Club Drive in Bowden Street. And those 2 sidewalks will be on one side of the street, and they'll go from Selman Avenue to Church Street. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to do a groundbreaking on those soon and start construction. And those will probably be about a 4-month
Right.
Project.
Right, and you know, you touched on the situation with right-of-way, including even construction easements, in that way, sidewalk construction is not any different from road construction. That is, you have to go through the processes so that we can actually get where we need to do the work, because we can't go into private property, even from a temporary construction easement type situation without going through the necessary steps. And sometimes getting clear title to the property for sidewalk can be difficult, especially true in older residential areas, or maybe in low to moderate income areas where there may be a death in a family and there's not the recording of certain deeds, and then maybe the next generation comes along. I know we had planned to build a sidewalk on Colquitt Street on the city's north side at the same time what you've been talking about, those projects, and we were not able to move forward on it expeditiously because of all the title problems that we ran into. And so that can be a problem. And then, you know, one of the things that we've run into, Michelle, that you're aware of, is sometimes you find a neighborhood that doesn't want a sidewalk. At the same time that you were working on Colquitt and Bowden and Club, we also were working on Pinecrest, and that's, of course, is a street that is to the east of Hunter Park, and we were looking at a sidewalk that would connect from Douglas County High School to Hunter Park, and part of that, of course, was on Pinecrest, and the rest of it said, we don't want a sidewalk. We had that same situation a number of years ago. I was working on trying to get a community development block grant to do a number of things over in Mill Village, and the residents in the Mill Village basically told us, we don't want a sidewalk here. We don't want sidewalks because our front yards are very small anyway. We don't want to lose any part of our front yard, and we're accustomed to walking in the street anyway, so we're just fine without sidewalks. And of course, we removed sidewalks from that project, which was funded, and so no sidewalks in Mill Village. Couple of pedestrian projects I want you to talk to us a little bit about is that they're on the list for the Transportation Improvement Act, the T-Splosh, the July 31st Metro-wide referendum on transportation funding. Tell us about these 2 projects, where they're located, and what reason we felt like they should be on the list.
The 2 projects are called the Doris Road Multi-Use Trail Phase 1 and the Doris Road Multi-Use Trail Phase 2. Phase 1 will go from the Transportation Center to Presley Mill Road, and it will be, depending on what we look at in the right-of-way, it'll be between a 6 or 8 foot multi-use trail. And then the second portion would go from I-20 down to Slater Mill Road. And what it's basically doing is it's going to provide connectivity. So if you need to use the transportation center and you need to go to West Central Tech, the hospital, or any of those areas, any medical offices, the courthouse, it will provide that connectivity for citizens to use.
Right. And of course, there are a number of projects on the list for that July 31st referendum. Most of them are major road projects, but we do have those two smaller projects. It was felt by the body that put together the regional list that those were important. Michele, we're about out of time. I always give my guests an opportunity for a final word, so your opportunity.
Well, thank you for having me on the show today. Thank you very much.
Great to have you, and appreciate your 17 years of service to the city in the planning, and look forward to working with you in the months ahead.
Okay,
and I'll be back in just a minute to talk with another guest on this edition of On the Agenda. My second guest today is Maintenance and Sanitation Director Greg Roberts. Greg, good to have you with us today.
Good to be here. Thank you, Bill.
Well, Greg, I was looking back over the schedule of past episodes of On the Agenda, was surprised to find that it was back in the first half of 2008, 4 years ago, that you were last on with me. We were talking, of course, about the Maintenance Department and Sanitation Department. So it's been a long time since you've been on City TV.
Well, it's like I told you, time flies when you're having fun.
Well, as you know, my first guest today was City Planning Director Michele Wright, and we were talking about the planning process for building sidewalks. And of course, once upon a time, you picked up on everything with sidewalks once we said, okay, let's move forward with it for construction. At least now we have our civil and environmental inspector, Mike Bryant, that's responsible for inspecting sidewalks while they're under construction. But of course, you pick up on making sure that they're maintained properly. And we do have a growing system of sidewalks, of course, in the city of Douglasville. About what's the mileage you figure of sidewalks we have, and any qualifiers you want to put on that answer, but what's our system look like at this time?
I would say for the general discussion, about 25 miles of sidewalk. It's probably a little more than that.
Right.
One reason it might look like it would be less than that is we do have some connectivity issues, and that's really what brings us to this point to talk about it.
Right.
But there are a lot of there are a lot of connectivity, and we'll talk more about that as we continue this discussion.
Right. 25 miles is a lot of miles of sidewalk, and I bet for a lot of people they will be surprised that we have that much mileage. Now, of course, the city maintenance department has built and has repaired sidewalk sections down through the years. We've had a program to kind of, as you say, on the connectivity where we've got sidewalks, we might have a small gap that needs to be filled in. And I know that you have also done, the city has done some major sidewalk projects. The one on Parkway South that our own forces, I think, did some years ago. And then we did, with city general funds, built the sidewalk along Campbellton Street from Presley Mill down to the I-20 bridge. But you have been involved, obviously, and with our crews on actually new sidewalks that we've built.
Yes, sir. We have. It's been a while since we've done any great portions of sidewalk in this manner, but we do have some folks that are capable of doing that whenever we designate an area to try to connect some of these sidewalk points.
Right, and of course we've just, for a lot of the new construction, have contracted that out, but of course repair work takes a lot of time. We've got sidewalks that have broken areas for different reasons because of the aging process. Root systems create problems for us, and So I know that y'all are constantly having to deal with those kind of issues with our sidewalks.
Yes, we try to make repairs and corrections when we find them and as necessary. We do depend on the public to report these to us. A lot of times, you know, we have various areas of sidewalk where it maybe was installed 40, 50 years ago. And those are still in good shape by and large. There are some areas where an older tree has came to full growth and the roots have pushed it up.
Yeah.
The only problems we tend to experience in the newer subdivisions where contractors might install them is where the sidewalk will connect to a storm drain top. And we experience some settling around those, and maybe 2 or 3 years after construction we have to go back and provide some work to those just to get them back in the proper walking order.
Right. Of course, on a week in, week out basis, you have people during the growing season out weed eating along sidewalks, dealing with limbs that protrude over the sidewalks that have to be cut back. So, so basically, that's an ongoing situation that you have to assign people to, isn't it?
Yes, sir. We have a couple of guys that are basically assigned, and it's usually the street sweeping crew assigned to taking care of those. We do depend heavily, or we get great benefit, I should say, from not only the business districts, such as in the Chapel Hill Road and Douglas Boulevard area. We get a lot of the business support there with their own personal landscape companies helping us out. But in a lot of the residential subdivision neighborhoods with homeowners associations and the like, they help us in that area as well. We typically will experience this type of thing more in the areas where there's less homes or less businesses, and in some maybe of the older areas, including the downtown area of Douglasville, we tend to have to manage those a little closer.
Right. City Council a few years ago said, okay, we wanted to have a sidewalk crew to actually look at the building of new sidewalks and the maintenance of our current sidewalks, and we tried to do that, but you had so much other work coming along that we never were able to really dedicate that crew. And I think that that's something we've talked about taking a fresh look at, among other things, as to how we will deal with sidewalks in the future. Because while we have been very successful, I think, on getting grant funds to build sidewalks, one of the things, as we both know with the grant funding, is that there are a lot of requirements that the federal government in particular will have, and that means it takes a lot longer to get the sidewalk built, and that does move your prices up. So I think that may be something we need to take a look at again ourselves.
Yes, sir. Certainly with the adequate funding and manpower, and as you mentioned, we did set aside a crew to do this very work. But as individual homeowners, you and I included, in our personal lives, businesses and the like, we've all experienced having to be in situations with doing more with less. And in the process, costs have gone up, fuel has gone up, concrete has gone up, materials in every respect have gone up, and so managing that balance has been a little bit of a challenge, but I think we're on the right track to get some of this back going again.
Right. You know, if I look at our sidewalks around town, I see some sidewalks look to be a little wider than others. Some sidewalks maybe come right flush up to the curb. Some may have 1.5 feet or so of grassy area. Why do we have these differences, or did it just happen?
Well, over the years, with the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, that went into place, that assisted local governments to up the size. If you go back 30, 40, 50 years, jurisdictions just basically installed it to their discretion. I've been to cities and counties where the sidewalk was 2 feet wide, barely big enough for me to walk on. But as a general rule and standard in the city of Douglasville, they will be 5 feet wide.
Okay.
That has been the requirement for a while now.
Okay. Now let's go back to kind of the starting point of our conversation. that among our new sidewalks are the one that we have along Malone Road that is now being built, one along Arbor Parkway and Stewart Parkway, and that will provide really connectivity from north to south. In your own words, just kind of give our viewers a verbal picture of what our network of sidewalks looks like.
Well, and that's a good point, and I've thought about that a good bit lately, Bill. And I'll give you an example. If you were to park your car at Arbor Place Mall and start walking along Douglas Boulevard to Chapel Hill Road, you could walk Chapel Hill Road northward up Campbellton Street to right here in downtown Douglasville,
Right.
continue your walk to Rose Avenue, down Rose Avenue to Highway 5, back across the I-20 bridge, back to Douglas Boulevard, back to Arbor Place Mall,
Right.
and that's about 5.5 miles.
Right.
You could even stretch that walk out a little more, walking the same route I just described, but at Freedom Island, at the flagpole, at the intersection of Campbellton Street and Hospital Drive, you could trek your walk off to the right and walk toward Hospital Drive and
Okay.
pick up in those areas and add another mile, mile and a half to your walk.
Okay.
A lot of connectivity in the downtown area.
Right.
It's some of those outlying points that just quite hadn't got the dots connected.
Right. Well, I think that we'll see more and more sidewalks built as time goes by, and so that our people can get from place to place without having to use an automobile. Now, appreciate all that you and your crew do for us with sidewalks and other things in the transportation arena. I always give my guests an opportunity for a final comment. What would be your final comment for us today?
Well, I appreciate you, Mr. Osborne, and the mayor and the council of the city of Douglasville. We have a lot of challenges that we have to work around and work with as it relates to the available funds coming in. And I feel like we provide a great service to the citizens of Douglasville. It can always be better. We admit that ourselves. And and I know you've been here for a number of years. We've got a lot of people at the city of Douglasville that not only enjoy just working here, but we really enjoy serving the people.
Right.
Got a lot of good people in Douglasville, and the benefit of somebody like you and I working here a number of years, we get to know a lot of our citizens, and we want to know our citizens.
Right. Right.
And for anybody that wanted to report any type of an issue, whether it be with sidewalks, sanitation, roads, lights, they're welcome to call us at 770-920-3005, or they can email us sanitation@ci.douglasville.ga.us, and we'll respond as quickly as possible.
That's great. Greg, it won't be 4 years before I have you back, but we appreciate you being here today. And to our viewers, we hope you will be back the next time we have a new episode of On the Agenda. Signing off today, this is City Manager Bill Osborne.
This is evidence of the fact that it takes a lot of people working together to make a project like this come to fruition. There's not any one individual that could get it done by themselves, and it is truly a collective effort.
This is really great that the sidewalks to my right will be replaced. They're currently not ADA approved, so they will be widened so that people can walk, and we have connectivity.